What if the biggest threat to your fantasy novel isn't the villain, but your hero's best friend? After spending more than 2 decades crafting and analyzing fantasy worlds, I've discovered that sidekicks can truly make or break a story. So in this video, I'll reveal the hidden dangers lurking in your supporting cast and show you how to transform them into narrative powerhouses. And our journey begins with the first mistake that turns loyal companions into little more than story-wrecking bombs. Picture this. You're reading a gripping fantasy novel, following the struggles of a young hero as they face seemingly unsurmountable odds. But wait, what's this? Their trusty sidekick swoops in, wielding godlike powers that make the protagonist look like a bumbling apprentice. This is the curse of the overpowered sidekick, and it's a trap I've seen countless writers fall into. Remember Albus Dumbledore from Harry Potter? While not technically a sidekick, his overwhelming power often threatened to overshadow Harry's journey. Now, don't get me wrong, Dumbledore is a fantastic character, but his immense abilities sometimes left us wondering, why doesn't he just solve everything himself? This is the core issue with overpowered sidekicks. They shift focus away from the protagonist, potentially undermining the very heart of your story. Your main character should be the one driving the narrative, facing challenges, and growing. If their sidekick can snap their fingers and make problems disappear, where's the tension? Where's the growth? So how do we fix this? The key is balance. Your sidekicks can be powerful, even exceptionally so, but their abilities should complement the protagonist's journey instead of taking it over. Think of Samwise Gamgee from The Lord of the Rings. He's incredibly loyal and brave, with his own unique strength, but he never outshines Frodo's central role in the story. But always remember that your protagonist is the star of the show. That makes it less likely to fall into this trap. Next, let's talk about a mistake that's so common it's practically a rite of passage for new fantasy writers. Think about Chewbacca from Star Wars for a moment. Now before you scream at your screen, let me clarify one thing. I, like so many, love the big walking carpet. Well, let's be honest, in the original trilogy he's not exactly bursting with depth, is he? He's loyal, he's strong, he makes cool noises, and that's about it. This, my friend, is a danger of the dreaded cardboard cutout sidekick. A character so flat, you could slide them under a door. You see, when we reduce sidekicks to one-dimensional characters, we're not just doing them a disservice, we're robbing our entire story of richness and complexity. It's like trying to paint a masterpiece with only one color. Sure, you might create something, but it's not going to be as vibrant or engaging as it could be. So how do we breathe life into these characters? The secret ingredient is backstory. Every character, no matter how minor, has a life beyond their role in your protagonist's journey. Maybe they have a hidden talent for baking. Perhaps they're terrified of heights due to a childhood incident. These little nuggets of information might not at all make it into your story, but they'll inform how your character behaves and reacts, adding depth and authenticity to their presence. From here then, let's dive into a mistake that can turn your sidekick from a trusted ally into a narrative time bomb. Remember Boromir from The Lord of the Rings? He's a character whose motivations clashed spectacularly with the main quest. He wanted to use the ring to defend his people, while Frodo needed to destroy it. This conflict drove some of the most compelling drama in the story. But there's a catch. Tolkien didn't leave this clash unresolved. He took it to its logical conclusion, creating a powerful character arc that culminated in Boromir's redemption. A problem arises though when writers introduce these conflicting motivations but never fully address them. It's like lighting a fuse and then nothing. No explosion, no resolution, just a fizzle that leaves readers scratching their heads. So what's the solution? Embrace the conflict. Show how it affects their relationship, how it creates tension and obstacles. And most importantly, resolve it in a way that feels satisfying and true to the characters you've created. Next, let me walk you through a mistake that can turn your vibrant sidekick into a fossil right before your reader's eyes. Consider Dr. John Watson from the original Sherlock Holmes stories. While he's a beloved character, he doesn't undergo much personal growth or change throughout the series. He starts as Holmes' loyal friend and chronicler, and that's pretty much where he stays. Now, contrast this with Martin Freeman's portrayal of Watson in the Sherlock TV series. This Watson evolves significantly over the course of the show. He struggles with PTSD, falls in love, gets married, becomes a father, and grapples with his complex relationship with Sherlock. That's character growth. Thank you. You see, the problem in my opinion with static sidekicks is that they can make your story feel stagnant. If your characters aren't changing, it's hard for readers to feel like anything meaningful is happening, no matter how epic your plot might be. So how do we breathe life into our sidekicks with this pitfall? The key is to give them their own arc. It doesn't have to be as dramatic as the protagonist. They should be changed by the events of the story in some way. Maybe your comic relief character learns to take things seriously when the stakes are high. Perhaps your tough-as-nails warrior learns to open up emotionally. Or your naive rookie could become disillusioned with the hero's course and have to find their own path. Remember that your sidekicks are on this journey too. Let them be affected by it, let them grow, change and evolve. Not only will this make them more interesting, but it'll also make your whole story feel more dynamic and alive. Now if you found anything useful in the video so far, please consider giving it a like to help me grow the channel. Thank you. Moving on to the next mistake. Imagine you're reading a fantasy novel and the hero's loyal sidekick is introduced as a shy, bookish type. Then, 2 chapters later, they are suddenly cracking jokes like a stand-up comedian. Confusing, right? Welcome to the world of inconsistent character traits. A pitfall that can turn your sidekick into a bewildering enigma. Let's take a look at Theon Greyjoy from the TV adaptation of Game of Thrones, which was a bit different from the original representation in the Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. Theon's character undergoes massive changes throughout the TV show, but these shifts often feel abrupt and unearned. His journey from arrogant ward to betrayer, to broken captive, and finally to redeemed hero is a prime example of how rapid, poorly motivated changes can leave an audience confused. In the show, Theon's personality seems to play roulette, leaving viewers wondering if they missed a few episodes. One moment he's loyal to the Starks, the next he's betraying them. Then he's suddenly a ruthless conqueror, only to become a cowering prisoner shortly after. Now while trauma certainly changes people, the speed and extent of these changes often strain credibility. So how do we maintain consistency while still allowing for character growth? The key here is gradual motivated change. If you want your shy sidekick to become more outgoing, show us why. Maybe they are forced into situations that require them to speak up. Perhaps they're inspired by the protagonist's bravery. Consistency doesn't mean your characters can't change. It means that when they do change, it feels natural and earned. Your readers should be able to look back and say, I see how they got from point A to point B. Alright, let me now share a mistake that can turn your unique sidekick into a walking talking cliche. I'm talking about the overuse of tropes. Now don't get me wrong, tropes aren't inherently bad. They're like the spices in your literary cuisine. A pinch here and there can add flavor, but dump the entire spice rack into your story and you've got a mess that will make your readers' eyes water. Let's take a look at Ron Weasley from the Harry Potter series. On the surface, he ticks a lot of sidekick trope boxes. The loyal best friend, comic relief, comes from a big family, has an inferiority complex. But J.K. Rowling doesn't stop there. She adds depth to Ron, giving him moments of bravery, jealousy, and growth that transcend these tropes and elevate the character beyond the typical archetypes. What becomes a problem is when writers rely too heavily on these familiar character types without understanding their purpose or adding their own unique twist. The key is to start by understanding the tropes you're using and then deciding how to make them work in your story. This might involve subverting expectations, combining different tropes in unusual ways, or simply executing a familiar trope with exceptional skill. Okay, 2 more mistakes to go here. So picture this next. You've crafted a rich, detailed fantasy world with its own history, culture, and magic system. Then you introduce a sidekick who feels like they've wandered in from a completely different story. They stick out like a sore thumb, their background, abilities, or even personality seeming at odds with the world you've so carefully built. This, my friend, is the problem of poor character integration. Let's take a moment to consider Tauriel from the Hobbit films. Now, I know this is a controversial topic among Tolkien fans, but hear me out. Tauriel was created for the films to add more female representation, which for some might be a commendable goal. Now on that, I'll leave it to everyone to make a judgment call for themselves. However, Tauriel's character often felt at odds with the established lore and tone of Middle-earth, which created significant issues in my opinion. Here's why. First, we have lore inconsistency. In Tolkien's works, relationships between elves and dwarves usually were historically strained, with few exceptions. Tauriel's romantic involvement with Kili, a dwarf, feels forced and inconsistent with the deep-seated cultural divisions Tolkien established. This subplot seems more aligned with modern fantasy's tendency to break traditional barriers, rather than respecting the complex interracial dynamics Tolkien carefully crafted. Second then is character behavior. Tauriel's rebellious nature and willingness to disobey direct orders from her king Thranduil doesn't align well with the hierarchical and dutiful nature of Tolkien's elves. While Tolkien's elves could certainly disagree, outright disobedience was rare and typically carried severe consequences. The third issue then, in my opinion, is her fighting style. While Legolas already pushed the limits with some flashy moves in The Lord of the Rings, Tauriel's acrobatic dual-wielding fighting style takes it even further. Her choreography, though visually impressive, feels more suited to modern action films than to Tolkien's more grounded, though still fantastical combat style. This approach to action scenes prioritizes spectacle over consistency with the established world. And when a sidekick feels this out of place overall, it can break the reader's immersion and make your carefully constructed world feel less cohesive. So how do we ensure our sidekicks feel like they belong? Here's a quick exercise for that. Take your sidekick and write a brief history of their life before they met your protagonist. Where were they born? How were they educated? What major events in your world's history have they lived through? Your sidekick should feel like they've always been a part of your world, not like they've just been dropped in from another story. Alright, we've reached our final sidekick pitfall, and it's a doozy. Picture this, your hero is in the midst of an intense life or death battle. The fate of the world hangs in the balance. And then, your sidekick cracks a joke about the villain's fashion sense. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, or should I say the Gungan in the galaxy. Yes, I'm referring to no other than Jar Jar Binks from Star Wars, of course. Love him or hate him, Jar Jar is a prime example of comic relief gone wrong. His slapstick antics and goofy dialogue often felt out of place in the more serious moments of the film, disrupting the tone rather than providing necessary levity. The problem here isn't the use of humor itself. A well-placed quip or a moment of levity can actually enhance dramatic tension by providing contrast. The issue arises when the humor feels forced or out of place, pulling the reader out of your story instead of drawing them in deeper. So how do we use humor effectively with our sidekicks? Here are a few tips. First, know when to be serious. Give your comic relief character moments of gravity. It'll make them feel more real and the humorous moments more impactful. Next then is to use humor to reveal character. A joke can tell us a lot about a person's worldview or how they handle stress. Also let humor arise naturally. If a situation doesn't call for a joke, don't insert one. And then consider the timing. A quip during a tense moment can heighten the drama by showing a character's nervousness, but too many jokes in a row can deflate the tension entirely. Having said all this, as you return to your writing, take a fresh look at your sidekicks. Are they falling into any of these traps? If so, don't despair. As shown throughout the video, every challenge is an opportunity for improvement. But I have to warn you, don't fall into another pitfall here by developing them in isolation, because then there is a high chance they will do more harm than good. So watch this video here next, where I walk you through the secret of writing iconic fantasy characters by probably considering their surrounding cast.